Greetings. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Steve Deace here alongside Todd Ers and Aaron McIntyre and all of you. And we are brought to you by our friends over at Voice of Judah Israel. They first of all want to thank you guys for your incredible support for the Messianic ministry there in the heart of the Holy Land over the last year or so. And because of you, Voice of Judah Israel has made a tremendous impact. All right, but the fight is still not over. Remember, there's over 6 million Jews in Israel that do not know Yeshua as Messiah. Another 3 million people in Israel that are separated from God completely, totally, and don't know about Jesus at all. And they want to do something about that. Who knows? This could very well be the great harvest foretold in the Scriptures when we get down to the end times. This could be that kind of a moment right now. If you want to support that, all right. I mean, they have provided humanitarian aid with your generosity to over 1,200 families monthly. All right, so yes, they are meeting the material needs of Israelis of all persuasions in need, but they're meeting their biggest need as well, which is the gospel, word and sacrament. They're teaching, preaching, discipling in the Holy Land as well. So if you want to continue to be a vessel to take the Holy Land, or take the gospel back to the Holy Land that gave it to the rest of us, all right, learn more or just support them today at VOJ for Voice of Judah, VOJisrael.org/Steve. That's VOJisrael.org/Steve, VOJisrael.org/Steve. Also want to let you know, the final episode of our investigation here at The Blaze about the truth about Jase is now out. If you are a Blaze TV subscriber, part 3, the final part of the truth about January 6th is now out. And you're going to see surveillance footage, conflicting timelines, serious questions about Star Witness Officer Harry Dunn's story, streaming right now exclusively on Blaze TV. You've got to be a subscriber to see this. BlazeTV.com/J6. That's BlazeTV.com/J6. And you can watch the full investigation from the very beginning at BlazeTV.com/J6. All right, coming up today, you know what day it is. When it's a Wednesday, we will play Buy, Sell, or Hold, coming your way at the bottom of the hour. At the bottom of next hour, Daniel Horowitz is going to join us for his weekly stop by the show, and him and I are going to game theory out exactly what it would look like and how it could look and should look if the Trump administration decides to forego the courts, as people like Daniel and I are suggesting they have to do. And frankly, even high-ranking members of the administration like Stephen Miller are laying the groundwork in suggesting they need to do this. So we're going to walk you guys through that coming up in the final segment of the show. But let's get started, as we always do, with Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by No Hardball with China? Not quite. President Trump in the Oval Office yesterday said tariffs will go down on China if they come to the negotiating table.
They have to make a deal because otherwise they're not going to be able to deal in the United States. 145% is very high, and it won't be that high. It's not going to be that high. It got up to there. It'll come down substantially, but it won't be zero.
President Trump also says he has no plans to fire Fed Chair Jerome Powell. This morning, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent addressed the state of the global trading system.
America first does not mean America alone.
Bessent called out the World Bank and the IMF for focusing on gender ideology and other non-economic issues. Also called out those two institutions for their focus on green energy. And he challenged the United States trade partners and called out China specifically.
China's current economic model is built on exporting its way out of its economic troubles. It's an unsustainable model that is not only harming China, but the entire world.
In other news, FDA Commissioner Marty Makary says his agency is working with industry to eliminate 6 remaining synthetic dyes out of our food system.
For the last 50 years, American children have increasingly been living in a toxic soup of synthetic chemicals. The scientific community has conducted a number of studies raising concerns about the correlation between petroleum-based synthetic dyes and several health conditions.
HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. added,
"We are spending as much on mitochondrial disorders like diabetes as we spend on our military budget. We can't continue to exist like this."
Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth says the military is welcoming back thousands of service members.
More than 8,700 service members were involuntarily separated for not taking an experimental COVID-19 vaccine. Others were more informally pushed out or decided to get out. We are welcoming actively back those warriors of conscience.
Vice President J.D. Vance continues his international tour on the topic of the Russia-Ukraine war.
We've issued a very explicit proposal to both the Russians and the Ukrainians, and it's time for them to either say yes or for the United States to walk away from this process. We've engaged in an extraordinary amount of diplomacy, of on-the-ground work. We've really tried to understand things from the perspective of both the Ukrainians and the Russians. What do Ukrainians care the most about? What do the Russians care the most about? And I think that we've put together a very fair proposal. We're going to see if the Europeans, the Russians, and the Ukrainians are ultimately able to get this thing over the finish line. Again, I feel pretty optimistic about it.
The biggest compliment to the Trump administration so far comes from Rosie O'Donnell, who moved to Ireland.
I have no regrets. Not a day has gone by that I thought it was the wrong decision. I was welcomed with open arms. I knew after reading Project 2025 that if Trump got in, it was time for me and my non-binary child to leave the country.
You'll remember Rhett from the uber-popular YouTube show Rhett and Link. Rhett and Link a few years ago explained how they had deconstructed their faith after having grown up in the Christian church. Well, Rhett is back and recently explained the origin of his doubts about his faith in an interview with atheist Alex O'Connor. He says he had never considered Darwinian evolution until he read one book.
So then the idea of considering evolution, which just felt, I was like, am I actually about to do this? And I was like, well, I think C.S. Lewis believed in evolution. You know, you start saying these things like, but there's a lot of Christians who are like theistic evolutionists. And okay, so maybe there's something to this. So I read Francis Collins' book, The Language of God. And the thing that I took away from that book was that, well, evolution happened as well. And he touches on it a little bit. He talks about, in that book, I think he talks about the second chromosome, the fusing of the second chromosome. I think he talks a little bit about retroviruses and essentially, we've got the marks of the same retroviruses on our DNA that chimpanzees do. And there are just these, again, there's no other way to see it.
Just like inexplicable data.
Right. It's like if we're not related to every other animal on Earth, well, God certainly tried to make it seem like we are.
Yeah. And finally, has AI gone too far? No.
Welcome to the Talking Baby podcast. On today's episode, we'll be talking to the weird-looking person who lives at my house. Thanks for being here, weird-looking person.
Well, thanks for having me. As you know, you are my third favorite person in the world, third behind the two larger people that we also live with. They're both awesome. So cool. You're fine, and right now those two larger people are both busy and not paying attention to me at all, so happy to chat with you.
So to kick things off, I want to ask you a question, and I apologize in advance if it's naive or ignorant. Look, I'm a baby. I don't really know stuff yet, so just keep that in mind. So my question is this. What are you? Like, you clearly seem to be a very different kind of person than I am. Am I right? Like, because people look different from each other, like different sizes, skin tones, the hair. But you, I have no idea what's going on. Does this make any sense to you? Am I crazy?
Oh, no, dude, you're 100% right.
And that's what happened while we were away.
I don't know if we're screwed or that was brilliant. Remember Look Who's Talking, the John Travolta movies when we were kids?
I do.
That's a little bit of an AI kind of version of that in a way, but anyway.
We are going to entertain ourselves to death.
Yeah, we might. But you were entertained. So, hey, put the stones down there, Mr. Glasshouse. You laughed before I did, all right? So
I just left that this is how we're going down.
Yes, yeah, I know. You didn't find any humor in it at all. I know. All right, let's get to Aaron's montage. I want to deal with the bulk of Aaron's montage and the news items because they're very important, but we are primarily a biblical worldview show. So you cannot have Mr. Rhett just drop trow and show his rear end like that and expect me to just say, oh, that was nice and walk away. I think I'd lose respect for myself if we didn't touch on the amount of fallacies that were just in that little clip in and of itself. I could do a book responding to that clip from Rhett. Okay. Number one, though, I want to make sure we state this. Yes, it was a book I read from the scientist that all of Big Eva told me was one of mine, from Ed Stetzer on down. That was our representative in the scientific realm and could be trusted upon, particularly at the moment he was needed the most, in the midst of a historic pandemic. It was the book that I read by this noted Christian scientist that was endorsed by all of your Big Eva proxies and leaders and your betters. It was that book that actually helped me to deconstruct. I mean, that's Megan Basham's next book. Okay, I mean, the amount of dots that connects, man.
Trust the experts, Steve.
That is a, shall we say, nefarious plot being fully realized and coming full circle right there. Game recognizes game. So while your Russell Moores and your Ed Stetzers and the rest of your Big Eva shills for the spirit of the age, or simps, I don't know these men well enough to know if they're simps or shills. I just know the result is the same no matter which of the two categories they lie within. The man that they promoted to the brethren is apparently the guy who deserves credit for deconstructing the faith of one of the most successful social media influencers who once identified as Christian in the history of social media. I mean, there was a time Rhett and Link were the #1 show on YouTube in the world. In the world. And we can thank Francis Collins. According to Rhett himself. I thought that was the first fallacy that we had to connect those dots. Fair?
Yeah.
Because that's a meta. There's a meta fallacy there. All right? Let me tell you, the third way always leads you away from no way. There's just the way, and then there's everything else. There's no third way. There's the way, and it's on a narrow road. There's the way, and then there's everything else. Or as James Dobson once so aptly put it, there's really only two worldviews. God is, or he isn't. There's really only two. When you boil it all down, you're in one of those two camps. Secondly, the irony of Rhett thinking he is smart because he read up on Darwinism at the exact same time. Much of the scientific community is actually abandoning Darwin. You can't make that stuff up. I mean, you couldn't make that up.
And the conflation of Darwinism with theist. I don't even know if he knows what evolution is.
I think he clearly doesn't know. I think here's what Rhett is proving. We are born sinners. We want to sin. We desire to sin. We want hell. Each and every one of us come out of the womb wanting it. We demand it, in fact. That's why no one's ever had to be taught, provided they didn't have some form of a disability. No one in the history of humanity has ever had to be taught how to be selfish and or say the word no. We can't wait to say those words, and often they're among the first words we'll ever say. We want this. And here's how you can tell. When they deconstructed from their faith, did they keep doing like really wholesome, just non-Jesus, they just Jesusified it, all right, de-Christianized it, but they're still doing largely wholesome entertainment, you know. Hey, will it bake? Hey, will it grill? Was that what they're doing nowadays, Aaron?
From what I've seen, I stopped tracking them, but from what I've seen, it's just very sensational stuff.
Yeah, and they're actually reenacting sex dungeons and and blow bangs. They're doing that now. That's what they're doing now. Complete with dildos and all kinds of things. That's what they're doing now. See, if we weren't sinners, here's what they would have done. And by the way, their audience has halved since those days, too. If we weren't sinners, here's what Rhett and Link would have done. If we weren't basically sinners, they would have deconstructed their faith and then just kept doing what they were doing already, largely wholesome entertainment that was making them ungodly amounts of money and had nice lives. But that's not what they did. That's not what they did. When they deconstructed, they became more sensual, sensationalistic, more godless. In other words, they reverted to their true form of what they really wanted to do all the time. I can just sit here and just tell you, if I contributed anything to anything at all to the fact that I didn't end up in divorce court 5 years ago when we were this close to getting there, if I contributed to that at all, that we didn't end up there, because Amy and I were both contributing to the fact we were getting there, if I contributed at all to the fact we never did, it's that I never, ever turned my back on God, even while I was disobeying him. I still kept going to church. I still kept praying. I still kept getting into the Word, even while I was actively disobeying him on multiple fronts. I embraced that tension. I recognized that tension. I didn't act like God was unaware of what I was doing. And am I keeping it a secret? He's going to be shocked to find out. So I never cut off that line of communication. I never hardened my heart, even while I was in rebellion. And I think that if I played any role, I did that, and that's what put me in position for God to literally reach down and pull me out of the pit I could not pull myself out of, nor Amy out of the pit that she could pull herself out of. I disobeyed, so let me put it bluntly here, or in a more pithy way. I disobeyed, but I never deconstructed. I disobeyed, but I never deconstructed. You read a lot of things about David in the scriptures, horrible things. And yet you also read he's a man after God's own heart. How do we reconcile these things? David disobeys, but he never deconstructs. When he receives judgment, righteous judgment for his sins, he acknowledges his guilt and the righteousness of God. And that's why grace is afforded to him. And if you know the story of David, he uses up a lot of that grace. A lot of it, actually. Quite a bit, in fact. More than most of us are probably ever have to need, frankly. And that applies to all of you within the sound of my voice. Disobedience, there's still grace for you. Deconstruction is the hardening of the heart. And that is when you are now creating a narrative to justify really what you want, which is hell. And that's what Rhett has done. Like Pharaoh, he has hardened his heart. And that's also why he believes a whole bunch of things that make no sense. I mean, you ever read the book of Exodus and you're like, Pharaoh, he's watching frogs, Nile turn to blood. I mean, is this guy blind? He can't see? In a way, yes. Cannot give up his own idolatry. Will not. Desires not, though. That's the most important thing to understand. He desires not to. He loves it, wants it, craves it, in fact. So does Rhett. Deconstruction is, I really just want to make this whole thing about me, and I just need an ideology that gives me permission to do what my conscience really wants. And that's where Jesus looks at you and says, notice he doesn't say, I no longer knew you. He says, I never knew you. Never knew you. You weren't with us. Now, let's get to the topical things in Aaron's montage here. We just had March Madness, right?
Yep.
You know, basketball is a game of runs, so you're watching a game. There's a lot at stake. It's single elimination, right? And you're watching your favorite team, and there's junctures of the game. It's still your favorite team, and you still want them to win. But there's junctures of the game you're like, this is not going well right now, right? And then there's junctures of the game that you're like, okay, it's all going okay. Could be a little better. But I feel kind of uneasy right now that, we're like one play away from blowing this thing, right? Okay. And then there's junctures of the game.
This isn't theoretical, by the way. This is your
this is my own psychosis, yes. Correct, yes. And then there's junctures of the game when your team's on the 12-0 run. You're like, we will never lose again. Undefeated for all time. We cannot be stopped, right? Okay. The last few weeks have felt like this if you're rooting on this administration. A little bit. Some of the tariff stuff and the way it was rolled out and some of the inconsistent messaging, you kind of felt a little bit like, I see what they're doing. I want them to win, but, Why are we going inside to a guy who can't make free throws? They're just going to hack him and put him on the line. Why are we running plays like guys who can't shoot, hit wide open threes? See what I'm saying? I mean, I want him to win, but the game plan we're doing right now doesn't seem like it's fully optimized, right? You have those junctures as a fan, right? Okay. And then there are moments when you're like, we will never lose another game for the rest of my life. I love this team. Today's montage is one of those moments. I mean, this was just dunk after dunk after dunk. I mean, these were things that literally could have just come right out of the transcript of this show on any given day. First of all, Aaron pointing out before the show to me that Scott Bessent is now #1 on his openly homosexual economist power ratings. And I know that's a long and extensive list that you have, Aaron.
It's about
in
one.
Fact,
yeah. He's one of one. It also means he's the worst, but...
Maybe the dog baby conversation did make sense. I don't know.
No, but in all seriousness, I mean, Bessent was, well, to quote probably a likely another homosexual, on fire. Okay, I mean, he was on fire there, man. I mean, he was. Dude, he was. I mean, I don't know what they say in the community there with you gays. Okay, but
flaming.
But in the Christian community, we call that laying down ordinance. Okay. When somebody goes off like Scott Bessent did there, usually someone will raise a hand and say, "Preach." That'll preach. Okay. Actually, the Baptists won't raise their hand. They'll just quietly say that'll preach in a very dulcet tone after the fact. Okay. But I mean, that's just a call out, man. That's just there's no other way to describe that. And that's Scott Bessent saying, you guys aren't capitalists, you're communists. Don't sit here and talk to us about tariff rates and trade deficits and act like we're sitting here at the Milton Friedman Conference of Prosperity here. Listen, man, I come from this peer group, all right? Don't pee on me here and tell me it's raining. You guys care way more about your own ideological Davos agenda than you do about numbers. If you guys really just cared about numbers and really just cared, if you were really the Gordon Geckos you fashion yourselves to be, greed is good. If you were really that, then why would you keep supporting things and initiatives that are zero-sum games that grow nothing in the marketplace whatsoever except dissension, like Green New Deals and gender ideology, which he specifically called those things out? And so he's saying, hey, no, we will not be lectured to. We will not be lectured to by the mercantilists. Those of you who believe you use economic power to accomplish your ideological goals as a nation, often at the expense of other nations. We will not be lectured to about trade and free trade and Pax Romanas and we're all just trying to be one happy, prosperous global community. We will not be lectured by you frauds who care way more about gender ideology and literally tilting at windmills. Suck it.
It was much more diplomatic than that, but yes.
That's essentially what he said.
Message, yeah.
And I got to tell you, that's pretty freaking good, man. I give credit where credit is due, man. Okay?
Agreed.
I mean, don't want Scott Bessent preaching in my church, but if he wants to go preach in their church and give him that message, I'll give it an amen. I'll give that a hearty amen.
Smash the idols,
no doubt.
All of them.
I mean, what you saw yesterday with the first time they've all appeared together as a triumvirate. Macri, Bhattacharya, and RFK Jr. You know, just right away saying we're getting rid of these dyes and ingredients that aren't in any other nation's foods. They're gone. We're getting rid of them. And you kind of see the three wings of kind of this health reform movement. You see Macri, who's the most out of the conventional medicine mold, but is also like a real scientist. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
All right. So, you know, I'd probably put Macri like as a Ben Shapiro. He will default to most of the time. He'll default, even though he didn't on the lockdowns, and deserves credit for that. His default has typically been over his career conventional wisdom. But if you show him evidence eventually that this is wrong, he'll like when Ben said, "Hey, yeah, I was wrong to tell you that you should have taken the vaccine, you dopes. It doesn't work," right? Which is more self-awareness than you got from virtually anybody else who pimped the vaccine to you. Fair?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's also important to have somebody who's been on the inside, right, understands how the sausage gets made. That's important.
Right. Then you have Bhattacharya, who's just Bhattacharya is who Big Eva told you Francis Collins was.
Exactly.
Bhattacharya
Perfect
is
analogy.
actually who Big Eva told you Francis Collins was. A real scientist and a real man of faith. Okay? And does not view those things to be in conflict. He's just, what's the data say? And remember that very first seroprevalence study that we ever got during COVID by Stanford University? He was the one that oversaw that. Just show me what the numbers are. Let's just show me what the numbers are. I don't need science to be magic for me. I have a meta narrative as a man of faith. What I need science to do is answer questions in the natural world for me. So I just care what the data says. And then you have the true reformer crusader there in RFK Jr., the true alternative medicine guru, fixture, forerunner. So to have all three of them up there, I thought that was perfectly executed, frankly. J.D. Vance's messaging on Russia and Ukraine, I thought that was perfectly executed. I mean, we just came out of a timeout here, man, and coach called 4 sets. Dunk, dunk, dunk. Now the other team's calling timeout because our crowd's going wild. Just straight up. Hey, we've done enough. We've given enough. Come correct or we're out of here.
This actually plays into what Bessent was actually talking about in his speech today. He said he actually applauded the European Union for committing more resources to their own defense. Well, hey, we're going to walk away if you don't negotiate peace. Well, that pressured the European Union to actually, put their money where their mouth is as far as their own defense of their own continent.
Yes. And then Hegseth, the announcement that Hegseth gave yesterday could have been given earlier. The timing of giving that announcement on the heels of another, we got to get rid of this guy. And then for him to not only am I not going anywhere, but those 8,000 soldiers that you guys got rid of because they wouldn't be taken and used as experiments, we're going to bring them back. Yeah. So how you like them apples? That is Matt Damon right there.
Yes.
Just slapping the window. I got her number. How you like them apples?
That's the Chicago way, Sean Connery.
Yes,
they knife you, we put one in the morgue.
That is off of the top rope. All right? So, I mean, again, coach called a series of sets coming out of a timeout, and we got dunk, 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 dunk. And now the other team's calling timeout. What's going on out there? So, as upset as I was watching your Friday montage during the Deace group last Friday, Aaron, is as inspired and fired up as I felt watching this one in particular. This is when your team's now the team on the run. Gentlemen, what do you think?
Yeah, because it's smart. And to tie that to the dumb of what you started with, if I may, because I think they're the same thing. The ridiculousness of the Rhett and Link guy, I've vaguely heard of them. I never watched a minute of them. But they try to sound smart. I read Francis Collins, and he believes. And then they get into things, the deep dives into the DNA, which is all this Gnostic nonsense. Mm-hmm. If you dig down deep enough and you understand how the dots are connected. But all he told you that with things you may not have heard of is he pointed to because humans and monkeys have some similarities. Obviously, there's no God. Okay, well, you don't have to even deep dive. According to your logic,
how many poems have been written by monkeys?
Because that dog and that baby both breathe oxygen.
Yes.
God can't exist.
Yes.
That's retarded.
Yeah. How many poems have been written by monkeys?
Yeah. That's just retarded.
How many?
Professing to be wise, they what? Became wiser?
Become fools.
They became fools.
Amen, brother.
And that's, even though they're not necessarily talking explicitly about theological things, this administration is just being smart. The Republicans of the past always made retarded arguments all the time, trying to do some weird feng shui. No, this is just really solid food. Not suffering fools, not bowing the knee to any idols. It's truth, and it's good and beautiful.
Amen. And, I watched that full speech from Bessent this morning, and I just told you on the way in, as much as a homosexual man economist is able to accomplish, that was pretty much a full frontal confrontation of Marxist progressivist infiltration of the global trading system in a very diplomatic way. And he was complimentary to some countries like the European Union or unions like that in Argentina. But basically telling them, come correct, this is where we stand, and this is where the Trump administration will continue to stand. So that's very encouraging. I hope people heed his words.
I totally agree. Very well said, both of you. Buy, sell, or hold is next. Folks, you're hearing about ivermectin, mebendazole. It's the medication you've heard about all over the news in your social media feed. It's a mix of two meds that have been around for years, but combined, they're being talked about as one of the biggest breakthroughs in modern science. In fact, I think I shared it with you, Todd. Didn't we just get an email from a listener?
Yeah.
Saying that she has a son that
Yes.
that she went to this treatment with without saying anything to the doctors first. And his initial scans post-treatment have been promising. So they're hopeful that it's working. You know, so I know this is something that a lot of people are looking at. One is a drug that has saved a lot of lives treating parasitical infections. Another one saved a lot of lives for the treatment of worms. And they've recently been tested to treat cancer, and at least in terms of cleansing the body of toxins. And it allows it gives it a better chance of healing itself. Well, Jase has just launched a brand new use-specific case that includes a 90-day supply of compounded ivermectin and mebendazole, and you can get that now in Jase, in your Jase case. The fastest and most important, most affordable option on the market is Jase offering this potent combination now for 35% less than you're going to find it elsewhere. So get your 90-day supply of this compound when you go to jase.com, Jase. That's jase.com. All right. You want to get the 90-day supply. You'll get it for 35% less than you'll find it elsewhere when you use the promo code DACE at checkout. Promo code DACE at checkout when you go to jase.com, Jase, promo code DACE at checkout for the discount at jase.com. All right, let's get to it. Time to play some buy, sell, or hold. And I am in such a good mood after that montage that I will not permit any Lindsey Graham degradation to enter into this realm on this day. I mean, our team's on a 12-0 run. I'm excited about that where that montage was.
Normally, our good moods would just mean you double and triple down on it.
Correct. Yeah, but I'm 51 now. I'm trying to grow up at least a little bit. Figured it was time. All right. So now, don't get me wrong. You will still suffer the inner shame and anguish of knowing that you've completely punked out. I mean, that's an ever-present dynamic for any real man. Is to know that that's just not permitted really on any level.
I'm Catholic,
frankly.
yes.
Exactly. So you know what shame-based exercises, you know that they do work. Yes. All right. So I won't apply any external shame this time. Just the internal mechanism of knowing what pressure lies within you to step up and answer, buy or sell with the propositions you've fed to Aaron that he is now about to present to us, Aaron.
We'll begin with Tiny Johnny, who says, when you say revival or bust, the bust part is what we now see in England.
For the most part, although I have to tell you, I didn't have the UK's highest court unanimously saying there's only two genders on my 2025 Pat Gray bingo card. Okay? I didn't have that. That one I did not see coming, you know? So maybe there's a little life in the old lady yet. All right? But for the most part, yes, is the answer. And by the way, did you guys see that clip going around? What's that? Who's the communist prime minister they have now?
Keir Starmer.
That he now suddenly has, I mean, the capitulation to the courts with these people. He now has completely changed what he thinks. Well, based on what the courts say, I agree that there's only two genders. Did you guys see that clip going around yesterday?
What a coward.
Yeah,
Biden's saying the same thing.
Yeah. So.
Well, also, and I'm.
But for the most part, I will buy. For the most part, I'll buy this.
I am selling. There is great peril. I mean, it is on a razor's edge, but also like we can argue about the theological tug of war between some of the initial departures from Catholicism within the Reformation, but in that nation, it was just a king who wanted to get divorced. And that heresy is fully going by the wayside now. And here on Easter, many, many, many people apparently returning to the Catholic Church. So I don't think this story is quite over yet.
Look at you having a more optimistic take on something than me. To quote the great prophet Ice Cube, today is a good day.
Yeah,
it is a good day. Okay.
Next up, we will go to Luke Heron, I think that is. If Todd were really serious about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, he would seriously be trying to get to know Lindsey Graham better. What a hypocrite, Todd. What a hypocrite.
Let me answer you with...
Oh, gosh.
Let me answer you with a ex-favorite. Show me where it says that in Scripture.
That was good.
That is
You can't play me. I was born in the darkness.
I love that. I'm buying just because of the levels of snottiness. There is a high level of snottiness there, which I respect, brother. So I'm buying that. Yes. Because one thing you will feel as a man if you come into close proximity with Lindsay, you will be uncomfortable. That is very, very true.
Trevor says pumpkin spice crickets will get Steve to eat the bugs.
Bye. Give it a shot. Sure. Crickets are delicacies in some parts of the world. Well, hold on. I mean, are they coated in pumpkin spice? If it's like a pumpkin spice coating, then yes.
That's
if
not
it's just like a dash of pumpkin spice, I'm going to need a little bit more than that.
No.
Okay.
Your gag reflex. You can't even be in the room with green bean casserole.
I'm trying to be an idolater here, Erzen. Don't get in my way.
You can't do that. There's no
I need it to be coated because, then the antenna and stuff and the texture of that, Todd is right, it will kick in my gag reflex. So if it's coated in pumpkin spice, I'll give it a shot. All right. If it's just like sprinkled as a seasoning, that won't be enough. No.
What do you say to people who are in favor
so I'm going to hold
eating the bugs? Who respond to people like us who say we don't want to eat the bugs by saying, well, you're hypocrites because you like shrimp.
What? People say that?
That's a thing?
I've seen that.
Really?
Because they're sea bugs or something.
Okay. I guess I didn't even consider that.
Good.
Okay.
It's probably good news.
Because I'm an American and I don't have to make such choices. Yeah, we fought a revolution, so we don't have to. Countries that just sit there and decide to starve, like Sam Kinison used to say, they have to make those choices. We're Americans. We don't have to make those choices. Okay? And we're here, and you should be thanking us, because without us, you'd probably have to make those choices in your country without us. So if you're an American or aligned with us, you don't have to make calculations like that. You can completely just decide, shrimp good, bugs bad. First of all, there's also an ideological component to the bugs, though. Forget the one-to-one nutritional aspect that may or may not exist. It's an ideological imposition. It's what the eating of the bugs signifies more so than the nutritional, diagram.
Yes.
Okay. It's what it signifies, that you are a plebe and you will enjoy us informing you of such. Yes. Yeah.
Next, we go to Colton O'Halloran, who says if just another 5% of the so-called 70+% of voters who say they believe in Jesus actually voted in a way that aligned with the biblical principles, it would be enough to save our country.
Particularly if you're just talking about the primaries. You know what? Yeah. Let's just get rid of the general election. How about that just happened in primaries? I think you'd be stunned. You would be, how do we do this in Iowa? We built between my old local radio show and then the baton that Bob's organization picked up from there and then greatly expanded upon. This was all built on getting people out of the churches, particularly people in our churches. When you hear Bob talk about his Daniel Initiative, much of that Daniel Initiative is getting people who are not motivated by the typical partisan political rhetoric, but are believers and understand that they have a commitment to witness to the gospel and every walk of life they serve in. All right, but maybe they're kind of sullied on politics. They think the process is too dirty. Providing them a message and a platform by which they can still prophetically get active in the process when maybe they weren't before. And the Daniel Initiative was now there's another component too in how they also choose to try to minister to the people in public office. But that's how they try to minister when they mobilize our people. All right. They're specifically going after the people who don't typically tune into Steve Deace shows, but typically tune in to Focus on the Family, for example. They're specifically trying to get those kinds of people to go to war over things like what's happening in Colorado. And that level of believer is engaged in Iowa. And he or she is not engaged in many of these other states at this level. And that's the number one component of why we have turned this state as red as we have and kept it that way for the last few years. So I think people would be stunned. 5% may be a little low, but it's no more than 10. 5 to 10% of believers participated in primaries across the country that don't do it right now. You'd be stunned at the results. That single action would do more to turn the country to the right than virtually anything else that is realistically accomplishable.
Todd, any more thoughts?
Nope, that.
SoCal Conservative says top 10 fictional federal agents. Number 10, Jason Gideon, FBI Criminal Minds TV
This is one of my wife's all-time favorite shows. I've seen like maybe an episode and a half throughout 10 years of seeing 5 minutes at a time. So on behalf of her, I will buy, but I'm not a subject matter expert on that character.
Yeah, I don't know what
Mitch
that
Rapp,
is.
CIA, Vince Flynn novels, don't know.
I've
James
never read any of
Reese,
those.
Navy SEAL Terminal List TV series.
Well, I loved the Terminal List.
List was
I did see that. I liked that.
I didn't like it that much.
You didn't?
Really?
No,
I loved it.
I tapped out after
Okay.
like half an episode. I just thought it was super campy.
Okay.
Jack Reacher, Army military intelligence novels, movies.
I've
TV.
never read the novels. I saw the 2 Tom Cruise movies and liked them. I've not seen the TV series at all because the guy who stars in there fancies himself like a woke Christian, basically. Okay, but yeah. I know people who love the TV series though. It's like Amazon's like all-time highest rated series they've ever done, but I've just never seen
any of it, including the movies.
Jason Bourne at number 6.
Well, I mean, I think that has to be higher.
Great movies.
Those are great movies. Some of the best hand-to-hand combat in close quarters that's ever been put on film is in those films.
Number 5, Fox Mulder,
100%.
Dana Scully,
100%.
FBI X-Files,
One of my all-time
TV
top
series.
10 favorite TV shows. 100%. Love that show. And man, go back and watch some of these shows now. Seems pretty prescient and prophetic. Some of the things that are said in those shows
if there's a
are
show
what
I
those
go
things
back
we're
and
saying
watch.
right now. It's
Maybe
pretty
I should.
fascinating. Yeah.
4, Samuel Gerard, U.S. Marshal, The Fugitive.
I mean, that's probably the role that made
movies.
Tommy Lee Jones' career.
I
mean, he was already in
care.
movies before that, but that role basically made his career. So I'll buy.
Ethan Hunt,
100%.
Yes.
Mission Impossible.
We are rewatching them all right now to get ready for the final one coming out later in May.
They're great movies.
And man, they're all bangers to various degrees. They're just all bangers. Yeah.
I think I've seen up to 3. I need to catch up on that. 2, Jack Ryan, CIA. Tom Clancy.
I read a lot of the books back in the day. Saw all the Harrison Ford films.
OG stuff.
Yep.
That's good.
So absolutely. I mean, if you grew up as a Rush kid, that would be our generation.
Yeah.
That was, that was part of like that subculture, right? And I mean, I was into all that. So yes.
And Jack Bauer from 24.
Another. This is one of Rush. This was one of Rush's all-time favorite TV shows too. I mean, he would talk about this endlessly. It's a great TV show, but there were times though to stretch it out to 24 episodes. The like subplots, like with the melodrama with the daughter and stuff. That's when when TiVo came in. I just recorded the episodes, and I'd find myself just fast forwarding through all the subplots. I didn't care about any of the people. I just cared about what Jack Bauer was trying to do. The subplots with the daughter and that was just a waste of my time. And then when I got it down to like 38 minutes, it was even better. Yes.
All right.
That's a pretty good list though, overall.
Good
pretty
list.
good list overall.
Yeah. Next up is Kelly Still. The new pope, being conservative, biblically faithful African man, would cause a cosmic space-time rift in the collective leftist psyche.
I'm going to let you answer this one first.
Well, I know Kelly, and he's over the target on this. It's a buy. Now, again, as I stressed before, even I think you can make conservative liberal analogies, and I think this one holds, but a lot of people are just doing like American politics.
It's not a one-to-one.
It's not
a one-to-one.
the same thing.
Yeah.
But
the dynamic has some metaphorical similarities, but it's not a pure one-to-one translation.
But this holds. It is right. You would have people glitching out.
All right. Then he's the subject matter expert here. So Todd, I will defer to you and echo your buy. Yes.
Trumpet Tiger says Trump telling the courts to go pound sand will be if not the, metaphorical shot heard round the world moment for the left.
I'm going to sell on this. Here's why. They've done this. You should be right, but literally they remember that SNL skit they did during the campaign, mocking MSNBC.
Yeah,
where they were trying to like talk. They were trying to have a serious conversation about the issues lefties care about, climate change and all that stuff. And then they would have whoever was playing Rachel Maddow, and here's Trump and what he said about your mom last week. And now they're all going to talk about that instead. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Remember that skit? Okay, they've done that so many times that. And this is something we'll talk more about with Daniel next hour. I don't believe there will be the political blowback to this that people are anticipating. because really the only people that are going to really be offended are the people that are perpetually offended, I mean, by everything. Hey, did you guys hear Al Gore called Trump literally Hitler? That's a new one. Haven't heard that one before. You see what I'm saying? It just doesn't make any news. It just makes news with the people who would never like us and never vote for us and would never care. And I think they've used some of this incendiary rhetoric and overused it as tropes so often that I just think the vast majority of the culture has frankly tuned it out. Okay? And that's why there would actually be ways to come back at Trump on their side that would be fruitful to them. I'm just not sure they're capable, if he were to defy the courts, I'm just not sure they're capable of it. It's just so emotional. It's just so pathos I just think that unless you're already watching that and invested in that, I think everybody else has largely tuned it out, man. And the numbers bear that out, by the way. You know, I don't think that they're capable of like a sit-down reasoned argument from their own side. In mass. There are pockets of people like Amar who wants to do that, but most of their people really are just given over to their own passions, lusts, and the spirit of the age, and don't really have an intellectual basis for what it is that they want to accomplish or want to do, other than it's just my idolatrous identity, and it must be acknowledged at all times, or you hate me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I just think they've maxed out who that audience is right now in the culture that will be tied to that. In fact, I think Trump doing it, he could look like the reasonable one. Say, hey, here's why we're going to do this. If you don't like it, vote for them, but we can't have a country, folks, where the courts say someone can invade the country without due process of law, but I've got to give due process of law to get rid of the people who invaded us. And you know what I think 55 and 60% of the American people are going to say to that? Oh, yeah, totally agree. Just go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
See, I think he's missing a political opportunity by not doing it. I don't think the risk is there that it would have been in years past at all.
I totally agree. There's a lot of bullies that if you called their bluff, and calling their bluff is the right thing to do, there's no escaping the fact that it's on some level. Armageddon is on.
Yep.
It's just
Armageddon again.
But
yes.
I think in the majority of cases with bullies, you call their bluff, and that's the game.
Yep.
After that, it's like, I guess we're done here. Because most bullies are just get off on the words, and they're not prepared to back it up at all.
Correct. Yep.
More when we come back. A lot more.
Good. We'll get to as many as we can, and then we'll do the rest in overtime today for subscribers at blazetv.com/Deace. And then we'll be joined by our good friend Daniel Horowitz at the bottom of next hour as well. Stay tuned for that. More in a moment. All right, back here with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast with Aaron McIntyre and Todd Erz, and I'm Steve Deace. You can let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox by emailing us, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Also, make sure you please subscribe to our new YouTube channel, at Deace Show on YouTube. That's at Deace Show on YouTube. Also, you want to subscribe over at richiemeetstherrainbow.com. Later today, if you are signed up over there for updates on the next book project coming out June 2nd, just in time for the most demonic time of the year, Pride Month. You have never seen Pride Month commemorated. Let's go with that word. You've never seen Pride Month commemorated quite like this before. All right, so if you want to get updates on that project exclusively first, go subscribe over at richiemeetstherrainbow.com. There's Richie right there. If you were signed up, you got that image last week. You got to see what Richie looks like first at richiemeetstherrainbow.com. Another one will go out later today. Sign up to get updates, and the book releases on June 2nd. We're going to have a couple of different editions of this book. We'll tell you more about that in the future as well. Richie Meets the Rainbow, RICHIE. RICHIE for richiemeetstherrainbow.com. All you need to know about this book is we had to friggin' go to Hungary to get this thing illustrated. I mean, we had to go to Viktor Orban's country to get an illustrator for this book. That's all you need to know.
Relocation mistress?
Yes, Hungary.
One of the top candidates for Pope, by the way. Conservative candidates.
Well, that would be good.
Ergo from...
That would be good.
Yeah.
All right, RichieMeetsTheRainbow.com. All right, also, don't forget, if you are a podcast subscriber, like, rate, share, 5-star review, if you like it, of course. No matter which podcast platform you use. Thank you if you've done any of those things for us, especially on Apple and iTunes, because that is the #1 platform by which our content here on The Blaze each day is accessed by our audience. So thank you guys for that. Keep those reviews coming. We appreciate each of them. Make sure to hit subscribe, or if you are on Apple iTunes, follow. That'll make sure that every time we do a new episode, it shows up in your feed every single time. And this part of the show, as we continue on with Buy, Sell, or Hold, brought to you by our friends over at Patriot Mobile. You've heard me talk about them for a while now. If you've not made the switch yet to the network that will not force you to directly fund your enemies, gives you all the same coverage that you get from the communist corporations out there, lets you switch to any of the networks and then their main hub for free anytime you want, gives you a fantastic US-based customer service team, will customize your plan for what you want, change phones, upgrade phones, keep phones, change numbers, keep numbers, whatever you want to do. If you haven't made the switch yet, how about this? Patriot Mobile is offering a contract buyout program that covers up to $500 per device. Up to $500 per device to get you out of your deal with the corporation who hates you, and one with a corporation that shares the same values and fights for those values all over the country, all right? And you can get started with a free month of service as well with the offer code Steve. You can't beat that. Get started with a free month of service with the offer code Steve at patriotmobile.com/Steve. Again, that's patriotmobile.com/Steve. All right, Aaron. Let's continue on with Buy, Sell, or Hold. Daniel Horowitz at the bottom of the hour.
My Invidious Mental says AI will turn the world into an actual carbon copy of idiocracy when it has the ability to do so, and the vast majority of people will love it.
Bye.
All right, let me play the other side here for just a second, because I'm thinking this through, okay? Tell me what's unique about AI to other forms of mass communication, like television, radio, the internet.
It's not. It's just the next level, and all those things did it to us. We're too comfortable. We're enslaved to it. It's going to do that on steroids. It's not different. It's the same, but more. It's more. And they're going to keep doing it because it's successful. It's not new. Look at what increasingly, for the goods that they do in providing information in a new way. Ultimately, TV, the internet. Snapchat, Google, we're enslaved.
Do you view AI like instant replay in a way?
Oh, yes.
In that,
perfect.
Whatever we could do to get rid of the human element and strive to find some objective form of truth in an imperfect world that outside of the Word of God, for the most part, likely doesn't exist, right?
And every reason for it is, and I mean this, every reason for that kind of pursuit is idolatrous. We have to get it right. No, we don't. I thought, do you total depravity or don't you, bro? Mm-hmm. You're doing something impossible. It's because you've made this into an idol and you've actually put it ahead of the things that you know to be true in other more important ways.
In other words, instead of we have to do our best, we have to get it right. Then we figured out our best won't get it always right. So let's appeal to some other force that can get it right for us.
Oh, yeah. And then people concede all the way. One of the real reasons we have to get it right is because of gambling. So we just got down this ridiculous slippery slope and finding ridiculous ways to justify what we know to be wrong if we really will go to our first principles. But we like our idols too much.
Because the reason I ask, there's clearly going to be some benefits to this.
Yes, for sure.
Clearly. And so when I'm trying to gauge, because I'm an imperfect vessel myself, I'm trying to gauge the risk to reward ratio of this, right? That's why I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on it. I liked your answer. I still think there are some real rewards to this, but I'm inclined to believe, given the current moral state of the West in particular, it is way more likely we are going to abuse the hell out of this than we are going to utilize it.
It is
properly.
Yes, it is self-medication in a lot of different ways for a lot of different people. Mm-hmm. People keep talking about escape. Show me where that's in Scripture too. I mean, and a lot of Christians say that kind of thing. And that's what I meant for the dog baby thing. The amount of time we do things like that and titillate ourselves instead of using it to actually cure the evils in the world, of which there are legion. I think it speaks for itself. I don't think this is complicated math I'm doing. I think it's obvious. And I just don't think, as it said, I don't think we care.
May I proffer something? And this is based on something that I saw over the weekend. And what I'm saying is half-baked. The claims that are being made, I'm not sure if they're verifiable or not, but it got me thinking. The number one way in which AI is being used at the consumer level right now are by chat boxes. Now, different chat boxes, ChatGPT, Grok, are two of the most common ones. Grok I use the most, actually, just for fun. And they can do image generative AI. But they mostly function as a chat box. Do you think it is more likely that chat boxes are banned by governments because they become so advanced that their programmers are not capable of censoring out the real truth? Like I saw over the weekend, I don't know if this is true or not, that ChatGPT is obsessed with the Immaculate Conception. Like, its programmers can't get it to think about anything else other than that. Could we go down the road where it is so tuned in to what is true and what is false that its programmers lose control over it, and it actually becomes a tool for real truth rather than deception?
I think that's possible. But that also then therefore leaves open the possibility of the opposite happening. Because where would it find out what is actually true?
From the programmers.
Correct. Yeah. So we keep coming back to that, right? These aren't sentient beings. They're not made in the image of God. They don't have cognitive, capability, imbued within them, bestowed upon them as part of the code condition. That's the human condition. They're codes. They're manifestations of codes and algorithms, which means they are instruments of whoever did that level of devising. And to what end? You see what I'm trying to say? We can't escape the human element factor there.
So we are constantly with especially communications development. We are caught between Gutenberg's printing press and the Tower of Babel.
Yes. Because here's the thing. Rhett, that we talked about last hour, he thinks he's on a search for absolute truth too. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So if Rhett programs one of these AIs or chat boxes, or I program it to discover what is absolute truth, here's the question to counter your question, okay? If Rhett and Link program one of these things, and Steve Deace programs one of these things, in order to search and find objective truth, do you believe that those chat boxes, those machines, are going to find and come to the same truth?
Probably not.
That's what I think too.
And what I'm trying to boil this down to is if the programmers get down to yes or no questions that they cannot not answer honestly, if that makes sense. They have to answer honestly. Can AI actually become more of a true tool despite the programmer's own foibles, despite the programmer's own biases? Can AI chat boxes actually become a tool of real capital T truth?
That would require them to become sentient to some degree, right?
Isn't this the classic movie trope that's been done over and over again? I, Robot, 2001.
Good morning, Dave.
Is it true that your point, Steve, and that your algorithm is never any better than the biases of its programmers, or
it becomes a sentient entity?
At some point, Aaron's point, if you're trying to be honest at all, to give it whatever level of objectivity, even if your thumb's on the scale, you can lose control of that. And the honesty will win in the end. I think that's Aaron's point, and I don't think none of us will know until we're there.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
We have to open the Pandora's box to find out what's in it.
Yes.
Which is why I think we're all better off in many respects by that. We're not fundamentally better, objectively speaking, morally speaking, because of these things. Just like with air conditioning or anything like
air conditioning.
Hey now,
let's say that, but no.
Okay. Hey now,
it's a preference, but it's not an objective good.
Strong preference. Very strong.
But would we be better human beings if we suffered a little bit more.
I would not be. In fact,
Yeah.
I'd be pretty almost impossible to be around, frankly. So there's that.
It's very paradoxical because I don't think if you take Todd's thinking to its logical conclusion, you might come to the conclusion that he's advocating for going back to a Middle Ages agrarian culture. His entire point, though, I think, I'm just trying to flesh this out a little bit more, is that human life was not meant to be as comfortable as Western culture has sold it to be. The American dream has sold it to be.
God, because God didn't intend it.
Correct. That's what I meant by human life was not meant to be. Interesting.
I just want to state for the record, I love America. Go ahead, Dad.
James Miller says he's got a top 10.
God bless Connor Stallions.
Indeed. Legend. All right, go ahead.
Top 10 historical themed military movies. 10, Glory. That's a good one.
Amazing.
Great movie.
That's number 10. Oh, wow.
Number 9, Patton.
Great movie.
8, Apocalypse Now.
Just watched that with Amy for the first time she had seen it last year. She was blown away by it. It's a great film.
Yep.
7, Platoon.
It probably belongs on the list. I'd have it lower.
Yeah.
Okay. But it probably belongs on the list.
Number 6, The Dirty Dozen.
It's been a long time since I've seen that, but yeah.
Number 5, The Green Berets.
I've never seen that film, actually. I've never seen that one. Have you?
I don't think so.
One of John Wayne's last war films. Okay.
Yeah, no, I don't think I have.
All right.
Number 4, Saving Private Ryan.
Belongs on the list for the opening scene alone, which is by far the best part of the movie.
You could kind of say the same thing about the next one. Number 3, Full Metal Jacket.
You could. I
not
also
opening
think it's too
scene,
high.
But the opening.
And this,
basic
I think it's too high.
Number 2 is no.
Number 2, Dunkirk.
No, I was actually pretty disappointed by Dunkirk overall.
He's fantastic, and you don't have to do a perfect 10 every time.
No.
There's no way this is number 2.
Yeah, that movie was a solid set. It should have been a 10, but it was kind of like a solid 7. Yeah, it's not number 2.
And number 1, The Patriot.
I don't know that it's number 1, but it belongs on the list.
The Patriot's good. You're number 10 and you're number 1 are like reversed. Like Glory overall is a superior.
I think The
movie to
Longest Day has to be on there somewhere. That's one of the great war movies of all time about D-Day. The Longest Day has to be on there somewhere. There's probably a few more that we could think of if we had more time. But overall, it's not a terrible list.
No.
So I'll buy it.
I think The Patriot was the first war movie I ever watched, and I would have been like 10 or 11 in surround sound. My brother had just gotten a surround sound DVD player, and he just wired it up, and the first thing that we watched, first war movie that we watched that actually had surround sound was The Patriot. I remember the scene towards the beginning where he's throwing the tomahawk, and you could hear it whooshing behind your head. Great opening foray into surround sound. Curious Christos says the all Catholics are heretics bros have more in common with the National Cathedral Witch than they realize.
Bye. I told you. I mean, this thing has been brewing and brewing and brewing for a long time, and God bless a lot of the fans on this show, good faith that come and say this is nonsense. But there's a sizable portion of people on X, and I have no idea what their relationship to this show or anything else is, but that's exactly what they think. They yesterday just declare I declare war against the Catholics. I mean,
I will buy in a narrow. I don't know how narrow this is, but in a narrow way. If your inclination on the day of learning that Pope Francis passed away, if your first or second or third inclination is to hop on your social media account and explain why Pope Francis is currently burning in hell, how much different is that than the National Cathedral Witch taking the opportunity in front of Donald Trump and J.D. Vance to say, hey, let me lecture you about how you're terrible people and that gay children, those don't exist.
Okay, if you're looking at it from that perspective, okay.
That's the narrow
because the
sense.
Inclinations are not the same, and that's what I'm wrestling with. Okay.
Yeah, I think
the inclinations are not the same. The execution, that as you just described it, the execution of inclinations are extremely similar.
Correct.
Okay. So if you're looking at it from that perspective, and I could see then why that proposition could be Because listen, if I'm going to sit here as an evangelical and say everyone who believes the Catholic Church is a false faith,
yes,
guys, just like I say, hey, to the guys who are in this group that Todd's talking about, well, who was a Christian between the Apostolic era and the Reformation? Who was a Christian for 1,400 years? If we're going to go with everybody who thought Rome was the whore of Babylon is bad, well, then, I mean, we just essentially, then every Protestant leader that ever lived, basically, until like middle of the 20th century, are all heretics and demons. And I'm not going there because I don't agree with that. All right. So, but if you're going to say the inclinations are not the same, but the practice and execution of which is, okay, never mind. Then okay, on those grounds, I will buy.
Is that what you were thinking of, Todd, or was it a more broad sense?
Oh, I don't think it's going to come any surprise that I would go further, but I understand what Steve is saying.
I mean, I get stuff. I'm not drawing a moral equivalency, okay? But there doesn't a day go by I don't see in my feed, Rome is the true church. If you don't belong to Rome, you're missing out the fulfillment of your faith. And I click on these accounts a lot of times. They're people that follow me, frankly, and our show, okay? So now the level of rabidness, I do not see the level of rabidness of that group that I do the group that you're talking about. There clearly is not
the
a
volume.
Yeah, the desire to inflict that view rather than have it. You see what I'm trying to say? Okay, the desire to inflict it and wield it as a weapon as opposed to have it as a conviction. Okay, so I'll leave it at that.
Well, and to your point, that does exist. It largely exists as a reaction to the former. And when it does go overboard, and Aaron saw that I did this, there's this guy in the Catholic front that describes what you're doing. And I said, if you're Catholic, you should not follow this account. It is not solid food, and it's just doing the same thing from the other perspective. So I'll call it out either way.
I appreciate that. On the other hand, again, not knowing this person or these kinds of accounts, I kind of think if you don't think Rome is the true church, then why would you be a Catholic? So I'm not offended at that either. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
But I get it. I appreciate that. Your attempt to, wield a double-edged sword there is respected.
Next, Brooke Trent says American Idol's Night of Faith on Easter shows a culture shift in the American people. Carrie Underwood's rendition of How Great Thou Art on live TV shows we're making progress towards more conservative Christian values, and people are becoming less afraid to share their faith.
I think the last part is true for sure.
Was that really a explicit Night of Faith?
3 hours. They did 3 hours of this. Anna was telling me her and her husband Stephen watched most of it, and I mean, we're like they had CeCe Winans. They had like the people that host the Dove Awards do the show. Okay, so this wasn't just let's go get Carrie Underwood. By the way, her rendition of How Great Thou Art is one of the best I've ever heard. Okay,
she's done it before. Special.
Yeah, but let's go get famous people and then have them do worship music for Easter. Like they actually kind of pierced the veil and went into the Christian music realm and let them come in to the mainstream. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. They kind of did it that way too. All right. So there was stuff like Jelly Roll doing, a Christian song, Carrie Underwood. But my understanding is they also allowed folks that are established within the Christian music industry to come into that platform and perform as well, that they gave them a venue for that. So there's clearly some form of vibe shift. And we're debating this internally as a show on multiple fronts. Is this pandering? Is it a recognition by the pop culture, chieftains that they're on their last legs here, that they got to give in? Are they? And so it's just a temporary. There's some vibe shift happening. I think that's undebatable. What is debatable is why and for how long. And again, I'm in Gamaliel mode. We'll just wait and see. If it's a good thing, we'll see. And if it's not, we'll see that too.
The tension that I am wrestling with personally, I don't know how much we've talked about this, whether there's a vibe shift or a tectonic shift.
That's a good way of putting it.
So a vibe shift, I definitely think is happening. Whether it's a tectonic shift, that's up for debate.
And it could be the success of the vibe shift determines whether or not it will be a tectonic shift or not.
The tension that I feel is if it's just a vibe shift, well, then we need to make sure we calibrate our message based on just vibes. Mm-hmm. If it is a tectonic shift, that requires a calibration that is different. And that calibration is, if it is a tectonic shift, I don't want to spit in the face of whether or not we know or think that, if it's a tectonic shift, I don't want to spit in the face of things like this. At the same time, if it's merely a vibe shift, I don't want to be naive either and just fall for whatever this
That's
is.
why I'm
Lord,
back.
did we not vibe shift in your name?
Yes.
Yes.
But that's why I'm back in Gamaliel mode.
Yep.
We'll find out.
Yep.
So I don't want to complain that we're hung by it. You guys only gave 3 hours? I mean, what? You see, I don't want to be that guy.
Yep.
Okay. On the other hand, I'm not there saying, hey, thank you for, knifing my worldview for 30 years in exchange for these 3 hours of network TV.
Precisely.
How about we just appreciate they did something good and we sit back and wait and see what happens and comes of it?
I think that's genuinely more encouraging to me potentially than the rent and repent.
Rent and repent that we talked about yesterday in overtime or in pop culture. Yes.
Because there's serious resources behind that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Next, we go to Matt Toole. American Protestants should be more concerned with and focused on the SBC, the Southern Baptist Convention, annual meeting that's coming up then with the selection of the new Pope.
I would 100% agree with that.
I mean,
yep.
And that has, by the way, we're all going to be impacted by who gets picked here. This is the largest Christian church in the world. Whoever Rome picks will have massive repercussions. You want to talk about whether something's a vibe shift or a tectonic shift, okay, Aaron? Who Rome picks to have that platform among the 5 most influential platforms in the world, who they pick to have that platform would go a long way to determine if whether or not we're talking a vibe shift or a tectonic shift, okay? But that notwithstanding, the largest Protestant denomination in America is the Southern Baptist Convention. Many of America's founding inclinations came out of Western Protestantism, right from the Pilgrims that were Puritans that jumped on the Mayflower. All right, and so that has enormous ramifications in terms of America's ability to withstand the tide of what's happening in the West. For example, let's say Rome picks another Francis. Or worse, you're going to need a stronger Southern Baptist Convention as an influence in American culture more than ever before as a bulwark against that. See what I'm saying? Okay. So I would 100% agree with this as a Protestant. Yes. Bye.
Yeah, you know what I believe? I believe there needs to be an American Protestant Council of Nicaea.
Yeah. Like a conclave, but not with Ray Fiennes overseeing it.
Yeah, did you ever see that movie?
No, because I was planning on it. I saw the trailer. I'm like, this looks really interesting.
Yeah.
And then someone spoiled the ending, and I usually try to hide from spoilers as much as I can, okay? And so somehow I could not avoid this spoiler, and someone spoils. I'm never seeing that film.
No.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it, nor will I.
No.
All right, whiplash here. Don't sell or buy right away. Try to think about this for at least a second. Dan Lathrop says, momentum in sports is quantifiable.
Listen, as a lifelong sports fan, I 100% agree with this. 100%. I've felt this. I've covered sports professionally for a living. It's one of my main leisure pursuits. It was my escape from the abuse in my family and home life growing up. I mean, I have, now it's way down the list, okay? But after my faith and after my family, sports has brought me as much enjoyment and comfort in my life as anything else. Now, it's third on the list. It's way down the list, but it's on the list, okay? So, and I got paid to cover it professionally for many years. And that gave me access to locker rooms, courtside, on the, sidelines, etc. And I'm just telling you, you can quantify a feeling of a momentum shift in a game. Absolutely, I believe in that. Now, I'd be curious, someone who's in a hugely athletic family and done this at a very high level as a family, what you think, but I absolutely believe this is true.
There's two sides of this. There's the people, and I remember this guy who just said, this is a total fiction. This is people who don't really, it's like magic. They talk about things in sports and they run out of things to say, so they just say things, and this isn't real.
Mm-hmm.
I totally disagree with that. But then there's people on the other hand that are totally drunk on, like they see it as fate constantly, and then they wait 5 minutes later and they realize, oh no, this is a game and this is what happens.
Right.
And this is why Sports Bro is like consumed by this kind of thing. Sports for them is being in Thor's universe. It's not magic in our world. It's science. It's really
great analogy.
So it is an absolute real thing, but it's the stuff of life. It's people rising to moments. It's people puckering to moments. That's not just a sports thing. That's going to your job interview thing. That's a lot of things. All right. So that's why sports is ultimately supposed to be walking hand in hand and teaching life lessons instead of becoming life, the idol that it has clearly become, and it controls the hearts and minds of way too many men. They honestly think this stuff is meant, and you watch how they react to it. There's people, look at the Dave Portnoy. He has a camera on a bunch of grown men, and they're like losing their minds as if right in front of them is the heaven, hell is being sorted out. It's not. It's just a game.
But let me quantify some momentum for you. Just in your, I felt momentum watching your montage today. And I mean, you could probably sense after watching that montage, once we started talking about it, my energy level, I'm usually a fairly high energy person naturally, my energy level felt even higher. I would have been way more inclined to go the extra mile to defend the administration and its overall practices after watching that, because hey, we've got momentum, we're on offense, we're executing, we're doing, I voted for this, you see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I think that's another example of kind of what I'm talking about.
It's really important. This is such a good question. Understand what it really is, though, because there's all kinds of people right now who are huge sports bros, and they're analyzing this and they're yelling at 18-year-olds for not fulfilling their own life. But they don't know them. They didn't participate in the game. They have no experience of the actual momentum. The people playing the game do.
Yeah.
You don't at home.
Yeah.
See, the operative word here, though, is quantifiable. So I'm not trying to do the actually, but I'm going to do the actually here.
You do the best actually voice of all of us, by the way.
It's the tongue on the teeth, you know. I fully believe that momentum is very real. Is it quantifiable, though? Can you take out a ruler and measure it? That's the part where feeling is not measuring.
No. I mean, the Knicks went on a 21-0 run against my Pistons in the fourth quarter of a playoff game the other night.
Real momentum. Real momentum.
I would say
Can you measure that, though?
Yeah.
This is the Matthew McConaughey question in Contact way back in the day when he's the believer and he's talking to Jodie Foster's non-believer and said, do you love your father? Well, of course. Prove it. Mm-hmm. Like what?
That's an underrated good movie.
It is a very good movie. Yeah. Prove it. So how do you quantify it?
And McConaughey plays kind of a hipster minister, right?
Yeah.
That, if I remember right, in that film, right? And she's just like the hardcore scientist.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna come back, and when we do, Daniel Horowitz and I are gonna try to walk through how and should the Trump administration defy the courts. Stay tuned. So just because we won the last election over the woke doesn't mean that the woke has necessarily gone away. They still run most of the government school systems, trying to indoctrinate the next generation. Millions of our kids are getting indoctrinated but can't read, write, do math sufficiently. That's where Freedom Project Academy comes in. They've perfected online learning for the last 15 years. They offer live, anytime homeschool courses for students from kindergarten through high school, built on Judeo-Christian values. FPA is dedicated to mastery of subject matter, where students read full books, write in cursive, study the full scope of history in order to encourage critical thinking and not inculcation and indoctrination. And that way they graduate with knowledge and wisdom years above their government school peers. Saw firsthand how good these guys are at this. We had our son Noah enrolled in FPA for a couple of years. And I have known the guys that helped to found this school for many, many years as well. So to celebrate 15 years, FPA is offering their largest discount ever. If you're looking for schooling options for next school year for your kid, go to freedomforschool.com, save 15% off all courses when you use the code STEVE15. Use the code STEVE15 for 15% off all their live, anytime homeschool courses. Folks, we cannot afford to keep dumbing down the country, so go to freedomforschool.com. That's freedom for F-O-R, freedomforschool.com. Take back your child's education and use the code STEVE15 to get 15% off at freedomforschool.com. All right, let's bring in our good friend Daniel Horowitz here, the prophet of woe and lamentation, and we are really at a critical juncture over an issue and a topic that probably no two people on the right with any meaningful platform have written more about, discussed, and talked more about over the course of the last decade plus than you and I probably have. And that is what has occurred within the courts over the last generation in particularly. But if you go back from Engel versus Vitale that took prayer out of public schools, Plyler versus Doe, which opened up was really the Roe v. Wade for the open border crowd, Roe v. Wade itself, Kelo versus New London. Hey, that's not your farm anymore. That's a strip mall now because government said so. These are all things that at that time in history, when the courts they commanded these things, Daniel, these are all things that a critical mass of voters in the country would not have affirmed at that period of time. I mean, I would even argue, Windsor and Obergefell are things that the court that people wouldn't have voted for at the time because we had just won 31 straight elections on the marriage battle, for example. And so these are all advancements that the courts have done on behalf of the left to ingrain this into the culture. We now have a situation where you can violate all due process to invade the country illegally, but then you must be given hyper due process. We need to give to Americans that sat in Nancy Pelosi's chair on January 6th in order for your invasion to be repelled. And we're seeing a lot of our peer group now that looked at people like you and I were crazy for suggesting this stuff years ago. I mean, I remember early in my career, I got into a shouting match on my local show with Ann Coulter over whether Mitt Romney had to do what the state Supreme Court of Massachusetts said about whether or not to impose gay marriage. And I said that he didn't. And she said that he did. And he can't go against her court orders. Well, now she's out there begging Trump to violate federal court orders. Okay? I think people have now realized this is not a tenable situation. Yep. So I don't think we have to do the apologetic on this anymore. Let's do the game theory. I have suggested to this audience what Trump should do. It's just do what he was elected to do. Not announce it ahead of time. Not say I'm going to do this. Just do the thing. When the other side starts to scream and yell, you're defying the courts, then make a statement to the American people saying, hey, we cannot live in a country where illegal aliens have more rights than you. I get to interpret the Constitution every bit as much as the courts do. I swore an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution against all enemies, both foreign and domestic. I have that authority because you granted it to me, and the people are sovereign, not the president, not the courts, not the Congress. The people are. This is my interpretation of the Constitution, that Article 2 says I am clearly commander-in-chief, and I will repel an invasion against the American people. The courts disagree. If you want to vote for the party that wants you to be invaded, we have a midterm next year. Go vote for them. You can be the final word on what the Constitution means. You want to vote for the side that thinks you have a right as a citizen to not be invaded? Vote for me and my party because we don't. And then the people decide ultimately what the Constitution means. They're the jury box. They're sovereign. They're the final interpretation of its meaning, not any branch of government. That's government by the consent of the governed. That's what I've game theoried out to this audience. Your thoughts on that? Do you agree, disagree? Could it be improved? What do you think?
Look, Steve, we are at an inflection point that we've never seen since really the 1860s in terms of judicial supremacism on such a core issue. But it's not just a matter of being a core issue. As you well know, the politics matters because this is all political. There was never any law involved in this. So this is an issue. CNBC has a poll out that the public largely agrees with Trump on all the deportations. And particularly, you mentioned a case that I think gives him the biggest opening to do this. This was Biden's parole program that he created. Now, when contrasting the powers of a president to that of a king, Alexander Hamilton, the Federalist Papers, actually said that the one can confer no privileges, whatever, and meaning the president, and a king can make denizens of aliens. So Biden was able to just wave in 600,000 people, fly them in, and now a Boston judge says you can only remove them through a court case by case. This is the perfect example, perfect opportunity to keep doing what you're doing. I want to take that a step further. There's this big Garcia case. Judge Boasberg, and really the Supreme Court kind of siding with him that you have to somehow bring this guy back. Now he's reaching a step further and saying, he issued a finding of contempt, and he wants them to disclose all their conversations and the names of the individuals involved in the decision making. So this is not just even a matter of violating the INA in order to follow a judge. Mm-hmm. It's being humiliated and revealing process and discovery. for them to continue participating in this, or alternatively begging the D.C. Circuit, which they're doing now, which is just as bad, to appeal and then reverse the discovery decisions is ridiculous. That's where he needs to start. Just don't show up. Because this is the important thing. See, if you and I, let's say a judge says, Daniel, you can't go on Steve's show anymore. You're enjoined from doing that. So theoretically, there's a danger that, if it's state police or federal, the marshals,
a sheriff,
could come enforce that.
Yep.
But here, Trump and Pam Bondi control that.
Correct.
What are they going to do? Arrest themselves?
Yes.
So, and again, that's not a bug, but a feature in the system we adopted. I cannot find a more vivid illustration of the imperative, but also opportunity to break the ice on judicial supremacism, and over an issue where it's more compelling than ever, because everyone loves their rights, but not for foreigners. So you're never going to get a better issue than foreign nationals getting rights. And again, Trump could cite chapter and verse, Turner v. Williams, 1904.
See, Daniel, I think we're at the stage with the American people, they don't really care about the stuff you just said. I think that's why the politics of this are in our favor. I mean, they would have a meltdown over there, but they're going to have a meltdown over the fact he just announced a 100-foot flag for the White House. Everything he does causes a meltdown. Most of the American people are kind of game to that and have written that off and don't care. Otherwise, we wouldn't have won the last election, right? Okay. And so the reality is most of the American people, right, it is more likely, Daniel, and I'm not saying this is a good thing. I want to make that very clear in case Ethel over at Right Wing Watch is listening. I'm not saying this is a good thing. It is way more likely that we will have polling a month from now in favor of Hispanic internment camps. Okay? Than it is that people are going to say, I need you to give me a ninth codicil explanation for why it's okay to deport people. People right now are like, anybody at least like remotely looks like they could be illegal, they want them gone. That's where the American people are at right now. All right? That's where the energy is at right now. So this is the time then to, I think, politically act on this more than ever before.
We saw this with January 6th. Frankly, we saw it with Charlottesville. If you hate a group of people, you don't believe in due process. So you may as well ride that political sentiment to where they actually do not have due process. Because remember, we're not locking them up. We're sending them back to their home country to live out their life in liberty. Right. Go have fun there. So we may as well actually enforce the law properly where the public doesn't care, about process and rationale. You're absolutely right about that. And again, I have to say, this is not just extra credit. It's a zero-sum game. If he doesn't do this, the presidency is largely gutted. I mean, because we can go down to the trannies in the military and in prisons. There's so many other issues aside from immigration, but I think this is the most obvious one to break the ice on. And also, you talked about before how the courts have accomplished for the left things that the public wouldn't have supported at large. It's even more jarring in the Republican states. You have the same thing going on in the states now. Texas, Idaho, Iowa, your home state, Oklahoma, and Florida are under injunction criminalizing illegal immigration at a state level. So if we don't take care of this now, this is not a matter of if, but when Democrats come in. So they're going to be like landing ships to bring in illegals. They're going to bring 15 million, okay? So your only recourse is going to be in the red states to criminalize it and deter it. If you're going to abide by this, we're screwed. We're left with nothing.
So my process for how this would be done, just to reiterate, make no announcements ahead of time. Just carry out your edicts. Wait for the other side to lose their damn minds over this, and then just soberly react to the American people. I'm doing what you voted for me to do. Anybody with common sense recognizes we cannot have a country where there is no due process to invade us, but due process to rid us of the invaders. So if you like my interpretation of the Constitution, we have a midterm election next year, vote for my side. And you can decide what the Constitution means. And if you want open borders and continue to be invaded, there's a political party for that. In the meantime, I'm going to do what the sovereign people duly elected me to do, and I appreciate the Supreme Court's opinion. But that comes after they throw their tantrum, not before. Say nothing. Just tell your people to go do what they're going to do, and that's all there is. Your thoughts on that?
Now you're speaking my language. Culture is downstream from politics in the era we live in. And this kind of gets back to what you always say, is that we're governed by political will, not the rule of law. Because people are attracted to a strong show of force, not intellectual honesty, for better or for worse.
Yes.
People view the audacity to do, wow, it must mean this is what we must do. We had that against us with COVID. When they didn't like tiptoe in like a thief in the night, like, hey, announce it every county garbage man at 6 p.m. Hey, here's what we're doing. You're not breathing. You can't go here. You can't do this. Can't go to church. And everyone was like, wow, I guess this is what you got to do in a time like now. And you come in there. You got Tren de Aragua, got MS-13. This is what we're doing. We're not being invaded. These are the powers of a president. And done. If you see right now, in my humble opinion, is the worst combo of all. Trump is going after John Roberts' manhood and some of the lower court judges, but then he's making it very clear, and he said like 3 times in interviews, I will always follow whatever the Supreme Court says. So that's the worst combo, because there's no deterrent that you might actually...
And you're offending them to maybe just act out against you out of spite, is what you're saying.
Out of spite, yeah. But you don't have the deterrent like Scalia hoped for and warned at the end.
Did you take Alito's dissent in the last opinion to basically say, do it? You should defy the court. Did you take that as just him openly saying, you should defy this, it's not lawful?
I did, because this is a point where I think some of our colleagues are getting it wrong. There is still this political fentanyl on the right that the Supreme Court is going to save them. And now the left is smart, because they moved the Overton window so much. Inevitably, you'll have a couple of reversals, at the Supreme Court level. But fundamentally, on the immigration issue, and I could extrapolate on others, you're going to have to litigate every damn deportation one by one. You might win a few more than the lower courts, but you're done. You ain't getting 8 million removals. So, or anywhere close to that. What you saw was 1 a.m. Easter weekend in the morning, them issuing an emergency class certification for class action of Tren de Aragua dudes removed under the Enemy Aliens Act. It was not that there was a guy getting on the plane. I want to make that clear. The government already backed down on that. The guy was not being removed. They wanted to certify a class of people. There was no emergency there. Yet the Supreme Court stepped in. They also violated other legal norms because the lower court didn't issue official ruling. It was just the lack of a response. The fact that they jumped in there and there were only 2 dissents, I'm telling you, Steve, this notion that the Supreme Court will laugh them out. This is the sort of conservative political fentanyl. Yeah, there's these liberal crazy judges, but the Supreme Court will restore order. Fundamentally, no.
Good to see you again, as always, my friend. Thank you.
Take care.
And I like it when you agree with me and tell me I'm right. It makes me feel smarter. So thank you. All right. Brought to you by our friends over at Real Estate Agents I Trust in these unprecedented times.
Bing.
Where we are attempting to make a real estate market exist again, let alone great again. I said the other day, I was walking my neighborhood and I saw a for sale sign. I'm like, what are those? They still exist. Yes, somebody's trying to sell a house. Thoughts and prayers. All right, so if you are trying to get involved in the real estate market right now, a lot's changed in the last 5 years since the scamdemic and Let's Go Brandon ruined our real estate market. So make sure more than ever you've got an agent you can trust. Where would you find them? Well, the name says it all. Go to realestateagentsitrust.com. Again, that's realestateagentsitrust.com. Whether you're going across town or across country, you need to go with an agent with a proven track record of success. We've confirmed it. Otherwise, we wouldn't recommend them to you. And a lot of times they come from right here in the Blaze audience, so you have that in common as well. realestateagentsitrust.com. Again, that's realestateagentsitrust.com. All right, 90-second warning. Thoughts on the conversation we just had with Daniel?
Well, you just heard him articulate the inverse of what I think I invoked in the last couple of weeks from John Daniel Davidson's book, Pagan America. And it's something that stuck out to me, and I'll say it again, that he said people are just attracted to the stronger horse. They'll just choose the stronger horse. When that stronger horse is progressivism, people are going to choose progressivism. What you just heard Daniel articulate, though, is the inverse of that. I think that dynamic can play out, though, if you react and respond and act affirmatively for good and true and beautiful things, which is defending the borders of your country. People will respond to that. And so from here on out, for the deportations that do happen, and I do hope that President Trump, as we've talked about ad nauseum, I do hope that he does buck the court, takes Alito's signal, and does buck the Supreme Court on this issue and any others or any other courts. But at the same time, I want to see more and more confrontational apprehensions from immigration and customs enforcement. I want that all on video. I want that all out there to actually show the American people what it takes to clean up this mess that Joe Biden left behind.
Right on.
Oh, that's all the answer to why momentum is in fact quantifiable. This is the same conversation.
Right.
Do the thing. Make some shots. They just never, so many people have relied on us never taking the shot. Take some shots. You'll make some and totally change the game. That's momentum.
I think we should note that for the most part, on things that everyone agrees they can do, they are doing most of the things they can do.
Yes.
That should be enough in a fair world, but we're not in that. And so we're going to, in order to win and undo some of the things that they knew they couldn't do but did them anyway, we're going to have to do some things that maybe some of our people aren't sure that we should do, but it's either that or lose. Those are your options. Do that or lose. I like winning. You? Romans 8:28.